Hi, I'm Amy.
And I'm Kat.
We are sitting here at Wandering Nicks, and we wanted to start doing a segment called The Reluctant Wiccan, in which I am going to ask questions.
She's reluctant.
Well, I'm taking the class, okay, and there are questions, of course, along the way. So we thought we'd kind of start out just sort of talking about some of the questions that I've got as a reluctant Wiccan. Maybe I'm more of a confused Wiccan.
Maybe.
I'm not sure.
Maybe.
Okay, so I'm going to read the first principle of Wiccan belief.
Okay, background though. What? I teach the class. So that's why she's asking me.
Yes.
So, okay.
And Kat actually, is a Wiccan, belongs to a clan, etc. Is
etc., etc., etc.
Well, I don't know what your titles are.
Well, I'm an elder priestess. As far as Wicca goes, that's my title.
Okay, so here's the first thingy. We practice rites to attune ourselves with the natural rhythms of the life forces, marked by the phases of the moon and seasonal quarters and cross quarters. So that, I understand that falls like in line with Wicca being a nature-based religion. But here's part of the question. Why is the focus on the moon and not the sun?
The focus is actually on both, and what you just read is coming from the 13 Principles of Belief, which is a document set up by a group of witches that came together to make a document to state what we believe so that we could be recognized by the government as a religion. And that's principle number one. So to attune ourselves with the natural rhythm of life forces, marked by the phases of the moon and the seasonal quarters and cross quarters. Seasonal quarters, half of the year is dedicated to the goddess, and half of the year is dedicated to the god.
Okay.
So they are both represented because, for instance, Beltane is a holiday that marks the god coming into his power.
Okay.
So we are celebrating the god, and through the summer.
Okay. When's Beltane?
May 1st.
Okay.
Also known as May Day.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So it does reflect that idea of it being like a nature-based thingy.
Yes.
And okay, but why the moon still? We have the sun. You said about the sun. The sun. Oh my Lord, my husband's calling.
Be right back. We're back.
Hi. I think we're back this time. Anyway, yeah. I talked to my husband on the phone a little bit.
Sorry, had to turn the fan off.
And got some stuff resolved. Anyway.
13 Principles of Belief.
But we were but we were talking about the significance of the phases of the moon. I understand that the sun goes around and we have different seasons, and that is absolutely relatable to nature.
Yes.
But we've also got the phases of the moon as being important. Why? Oh, wait. No, you go ahead and say. Because I think I know.
Well, why don't you finish asking your question? Because I'm not sure what you're asking.
I was going to ask about the significance of the moon. But you were saying that half of the year is devoted to God, half is devoted to goddess.
Correct.
Then I'm going to say this and see if it's right. The moon, the feminine aspect somehow, and the sun the male aspect?
Absolutely.
Oh. Well, then how come
I don't want this question.
How come the seasons get split between the goddess and God, but the goddess gets all the moon?
That's a good question. And to be perfectly honest, I don't have a great answer for you. It's just how I was taught.
Okay, I wonder if it has anything to do with, like, way back in the day, um, the goddess was considered, like, some people theorize that when we had matriarchal societies, it was the triple goddess,
Yes.
the maiden, the mother, the crone, and all of that was tied to moon phases. Do you think maybe that?
But also remember that not only does the goddess have the triple form, but the god does as well.
What's his?
It would be the youth, the father, and then grandfather.
How come we never hear about that? We always hear about the mother, maiden, crone. Is it because...
Because so many people have come from bad experiences in Christianity or other religions that are patriarchal. So when it comes to the nature-based religions, and especially like Wicca, there's a tendency to focus just on the goddess because people are kind of traumatized when it comes to the god.
That's interesting.
But when you look at it as a whole and you look at both sides of the coin, you'll see that they mirror each other very much.
Okay. So maybe some kind of a stress is put on that female or feminine aspect to kind of...
overcome the trauma.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
That's interesting.
It is. And it's also really sad.
It is sad because I can remember being a kid in Catholic school.
Same here.
And wondering why, right, women had to be nuns and could not be priests.
Yes.
And thinking, this is really, it's not fair.
Exactly.
But of course, the men and the patriarchy do not see it that way or pitch it that way.
Exactly.
Okay. Cool.
Yep.
Okay. I'm looking some more at some of the principles.
Yep. Because
Maybe
we don't have to
just go through. You don't want to go through
We
all
don't
of them?
need to go through all of them.
Okay. So, one thing I was noticing as well is, let me see, where it went.
Which one?
It was the one where it was, oh, here it is. So this is Principle 5. We recognize that both outer and inner, or psychological worlds, sometimes known as the spiritual world, the collective unconscious, inner planes, etc., and we see in the interaction of these two dimensions the basis for paranormal phenomena and magical exercises. We neglect neither dimension for the other, seeing both as necessary to our fulfillment. So I understand that there's meant to be a balance between the seen world
And the unseen.
and the unseen world. But what kind of caught my eye was this part, the paranormal phenomenon. So, ghosts are accepted
Yes.
in Wicca.
Yes.
Do you believe in ghosts?
Heck yeah.
Have you ever seen?
Heck yeah.
Tell me about a time
Oh no.
when you have seen a ghost.
How about the very first time I saw a ghost? I was 11. I don't know. Should I be looking at you or
Yeah,
at the
I know.
thing?
I don't know where to look either.
So,
we're just doing
whatever.
the thing.
I'll look at you guys. So I was 11 and I was really sick. In bed for a couple of days, and I lived in a 2-story house, and my sister's bedroom was across the hall from mine. And if the hall light was on, even if your doors were closed, like you could tell the hall light was on. It was just obnoxious bright. So normally we didn't use it. We would just come upstairs. And if there was light on in her room and my door got open, it was like a dimmer light. It wasn't so harsh. And I remember rolling over because I heard someone open my door, And in that dim light was a figure. Well, I just thought it was my sister being nice for once and coming to check on me.
Mm-hmm.
But no. So, the next morning I was like, thanks for coming to check on me. And she looked at me and went, why would I do that? Loving siblings. And I was like, oh, okay. I asked my mom, my brother, my dad. Nobody came in.
Somebody did.
Somebody did. Well, then the next night, it happened again.
Oh, my God.
Except that this time, the figure came over and sat down on my bed, and I knew instantly that it was my grandfather.
Oh, my God.
Because he had the most piercing, beautiful blue eyes. I'm getting my goosebumps thinking about my grandfather.
Ooh.
They were like almost like that steel gray blue.
Mm-hmm.
Gorgeous blue eyes.
You could see his eyes.
I could see his eyes. I could see his face. And he used to smoke cigars. And I could smell the cigars.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember him putting his hand on my forehead and saying, don't worry, little one. Everything's fine.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was the first time. And since then, okay, both of our phones are blowing up.
I
Holy
know.
cow.
I'm turning it off.
Sorry, guys. So since then, I have developed my gifts. And when I see just like I'm looking at you.
Mm-hmm.
I see the physical form. But a lot of people have what I call a knowing sight, where they may not see the phone in front of them, but they know that the phone is there. So that's their way of seeing, if that makes sense.
Is that called claircognizance? Where you have a knowing?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Okay.
And I can hear as well.
I get what I think is clairaudient sometimes. Like I hear things. But here's my follow-up.
There's never just one.
To the paranormal.
Okay.
We establish, there can be ghosties. What's the attitude, what's the opinion, what's the nitty-gritty on cryptids? Bigfoot, Mothman.
There are any number of entities that live within our realm, our dimension, and without our dimension. And as time goes on, the veil between dimensions is getting thinner and thinner. So you never know when something might pop onto this side.
So Bigfoot might be a dweller.
Yep.
Of the unseen side who has come over.
Correct.
Okay.
And my personal opinion on Bigfoot is that Bigfoot knows how to traverse back and forth. I think that's why they've never been discovered.
Huh. Okay.
But that's my personal opinion.
Your phones are booping.
Sorry.
Okay. Let's see. Oh my God. Calling oneself witch does not make one a witch. Neither does heredity. So there are some people who claim they can like trace their genealogy from some witchy person. Nor collecting titles or degrees or initiation. A witch seeks to control the forces within himself that make life possible in order to live wisely and well without harm to others and in harmony with nature. So, you can't just say, I'm a witch. You can't just say, I am descended from Goody Proctor, therefore.
Wow, that was my monitor and my phone at the same time. So sorry.
You can't just say, I have.
Sorry, guys.
Uh-oh. You can't just say, I have collected all of these different titles.
Correct.
I am the grand
Poobah.
of the...
Because eventually you're going to get found out.
Okay. Then what is it? What qualifies you to give yourself that name? Because...
going through initiation, first you need to go through dedication, which is saying to the god and the goddess that, I am taking this step. I'm going to study you for X amount of time. And during that time, I will devote myself to you. Then the next step is initiation, and it can be self-initiation if you don't have a group that you're working with, if you're a solitary practitioner, or if you have a group or a coven that you're working with, then it would be initiation by the way that they do it.
Can't I just say, hey, I've been kind of grooving along doing my own little thing for quite a while now, and I'm self-initiating, and now I'm a witch. Who's to say?
Well, you have to actually do the self-initiation. You can't just say, oh, I've been grooving along and I've been doing this, I'm a witch now.
But who would know if I didn't?
You and the goddess and the god.
Okay. I'm just checking. I want to see what...
Because when you go through initiation, you are giving your life to the god and the goddess, and you are making an oath and fealty to them,
right? That
you are going to promote things in the way that they would approve of, and in return, you will get the blessings and the upgrades to your skills and things as you go along.
So it's kind of like, let's say, I'm trying to make the comparison. If I get baptized as a Catholic or a Christian of any type, I am therefore agreeing that I accept these things. And in the Catholic tradition, you would be receiving, in return, grace.
Yes.
Okay. And it would do you no good to say, hey, I went and baptized myself in the river and therefore have grace, because you wouldn't really have it.
Correct.
Okay, that kind of makes sense.
I hope it makes sense. If it doesn't, let us know.
Yeah, you can ask questions in the comments. Like I say, I'm kind of, I don't know. Anyway, we do not accept the concept of absolute evil, nor do we worship any entity known as Satan or the devil. We do not seek power through the suffering of others, nor do we accept the personal belief that personal benefit can be derived only by denial to another. So this is one thing that I see a lot when people start talking about Wicca or some pagan traditions. They say, "Oh, you devil worshiper,
it's Satan.
Yeah.
You're going to eat babies." Yeah, so was there a question there?
I would say, I'm glad that this is I just wanted to bring that up because this is like the first time we're talking about this.
Right.
But this is one of the stated principles that this concept, we do not accept the concept of absolute evil, nor is there any worship of an evil entity. And I think that's cool that this is stated outright, that it's actually said.
Yep.
Because this is a big misconception for a lot of people.
Yes, it is. And I think that's one of my pet peeves is when somebody will say that, because it just shows how ignorant they are. And when you try to have a rational discussion with them and say, look, I don't even believe in Satan, so how can I be a Satanist? How can, this be? I don't believe in hell. I don't believe in Satan, Do I believe that there are dark entities? Yes. Just as there are light entities. There has to be balance in all things. But not in the way, because it says as defined by the Christian tradition. So the way they think about it is not how we think about it.
I think that one of the assumptions that gets made is if it is not Christianity, therefore it must be against it. But that's a really, I think that's a really simplistic way of, number one, looking at things.
It really is.
And it's also uninformed. And it's also kind of paranoid. Like, oh, if you are not doing exactly what I'm doing, you must hate me and be against me. But that's entirely weird.
Well, I've studied the major religions of the world and continue to do so. And if you bottom line everything, it boils down to treat others as you want to be treated.
Yep.
Love is the way.
Yep.
And that's the only way that we're going to survive as a species. And that is in almost every religion, every tradition. So you have to look at divinity as, because they say we're made in God's image. Well, the people who live in the Middle East are made in God's image, and they look at God through
their lens
of Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, all of these different religions. And then, you look at Christians and the Jewish faith and all of these things. We're all looking to the same divine energy. It's like a giant diamond, and it's faceted. So each tradition is looking at a different facet of the same thing. And if only more people could realize that, I think we'd live in a much more peaceful universe.
Sadly, a lot of people don't.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So what else you want to know?
Well, I mean, there's a lot, of course. I would say that, we're working through, I'm taking this class that Kat is teaching, and right now we are looking into the fundamentals of doing stuff, right?
Practical magic.
Before this, we were looking at ethics. We looked at religious history, sort of theory behind things. So now we're moving into other stuff. And
the fun stuff.
Yeah. So I think what I'm probably going to do is make up a list of other questions that I have. And, I'm going to certainly continue with the class. And what I'm doing is giving it my shot. Like, I have done solitary things before. But that's not why I was asking that question, if I can just go around and say, hey. But I wanted to see what the formal education of it was, and what are the principles behind it. And I think maybe some people also don't know that there actually have been in the past organizations that kind of codified things and set down, here's what we believe. So that's part of it.
Yep.
Hi. Come on in. We have a customer.
So we're going to talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, I'm so